Okay, I'd like to call the meeting for the San Mateo County LAFCo for Wednesday, April 20th, 2022. This is a special meeting. I'd like to call it to order at 2:31. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Cosgrove,
Here.
Commissioner Horsley,
Here.
Commissioner Lohman,
Here.
Commissioner Warbeck,
Here.
Commissioner Slocum,
Here.
Vice Chair Draper,
Here.
Chairman O'Neill,
Here.
and alternate members, we do have Katie Martin and Diana Reddy. For staff, we have Rob Bartoli, Legal Counsel Timothy Fox, and Janet Lujan. Thank you.
Okay, and I'd like to point out that the board chambers used for the commission meetings continue to be closed to the public. And at this point, the clerk will explain how both written and spoken public comments can be made by attendees of the meeting.
Thank you, Chairman O'Neill. For those attending the meeting on the Zoom video conference, we will use the raise hand feature in order to organize any public comments. During the general public comment period and for each item on the regular agenda, I will ask those members of the public who wish to comment to click the raise hand feature to speak on that agenda item. For those joining by phone, please press *9 to indicate your desire to speak. You will then press *6 to unmute once called upon. When you hear your name called, I will prompt you to unmute your microphone and inform you that you may begin speaking. You will have 2 minutes. Please note that members of the public must wait for the prompt in connection with each agenda item before using the raise hand function. For example, you cannot raise your hand during item 3 if you wish to speak on item 5. Written comments that were submitted in advance will be read by staff during discussion of the appropriate agenda item. Thank you.
Okay, so we have roll call. This is item number 2. Open public comment for items not on the agenda. So if you want to speak about something not on today's agenda, this is your time. Is there any members of the public that wish to speak on items not on the agenda? You'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman O'Neill. We did not receive any written comments for items not on the agenda. And maybe we can give it 30 seconds, but I do not see any hands raised for item number 2.
Okay. Okay, so I will close the public comment portion of the meeting. So we have no hands. Go to item number 3, the consent agenda, which is approval of the action minutes from March 16th, 2022, resolution to make findings relating to remote meetings under the Brown Act, and a LAFCo file 2203 for proposed annexation. Do we have a motion to approve the consent item?
So move.
Is there any members of the public that wish to make a comment? I see no hands. And I assume we got no written comments, Angela?
We did not get any written comments, Chairman, but I do see one hand raised
Okay.
from member Christopher Cows. Give me 1 second while we get the timer on the screen.
Now, this is in regards to an item on the consent, item 3, consent calendar, Christopher. So no other comments for anything else. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Chris. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I wasn't able to see the agenda, but is item 3 with regards to the EPSD?
No. No.
Oh, okay.
That's coming up real quick, though. It's
Okay.
item number 4. It's the next item.
Sorry about that. Then never mind.
Okay. Okay, so there's no other hands raised, Angela?
No, Chairman, thank you.
Okay, so we'll close the public comments for item 3. I need a motion.
So move.
Second.
Second motion.
Second. Okay. Motion by Commissioner Lohman and seconded by Commissioner Horsley. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Cosgrove,
Yes.
Commissioner Horsley,
Yes.
Commissioner Lohman,
Yes.
Commissioner Warbeck,
Yes.
Commissioner Slocum,
Yes.
Vice Chair Draper,
yes,
Chairman O'Neill.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Your motion passes.
Okay, now go on to item number 4, which is consideration of the municipal service review circulation draft for the city of East Palo Alto Sanitary District, and West Bay Sanitary District. So I'd like to introduce the staff, who will give the staff report. Rob?
Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners and members of the public. Just a brief introduction before we turn it over to the consultants for the review of the report. But today we do have before the Commission is for review and for comment at this time is the draft circulation of municipal service review for the city of East Palo Alto, the East Palo Alto Sanitary District, and the West Bay Sanitary District. And if you recall, LAFCo initiated this MSR back in May of 2021, and that was kind of in request from developers and members of the community of the city of East Palo Alto in response to their inability to obtain sewer connections for pending projects within the city. The commission authorized a contract with Brooks and Associates in association with Policy Consulting Associates to complete this MSR, and that was a direction for LAFCo to initiate that contract, and the work has been completed by those consultants in coordination with LAFCo. This is the second MSR for the city of East Palo Alto, the West Bay Sanitary District, and the East Palo Alto Sanitary District, with the last MSRs completed in 2008 and 2009. And as part of this, it is really the shared constituency between those three agencies, particularly EPASD, the East Palo Alto Sanitary District, and the city of East Palo Alto, because there is quite a bit of overlap between those jurisdictional boundaries. So I would like to introduce now Richard Berkson of Berkson Associates and Jennifer Stevenson of Policy Consultants Association, Policy Consulting Associates, who provide an overview of the MSR. And because there are three agencies and the report is quite lengthy, it is suggested that the consultants will go through each agency, and then if the chair and the commission wishes to ask questions and provide comments from the commissioners after each agency. And then at the conclusion of the presentation by the consultants, to then open it up for additional comments from the commission, and at that time take public comment once the presentation has been completed. So now I'll turn it over to Richard and Jennifer.
All right, thank you very much, Rob. And it's a pleasure to be here this afternoon to present the draft municipal service reviews. I'll emphasize that this is a draft report, and we're expecting and hoping for comments today, and also up through the comment deadline that's upcoming. Again, I'm Richard Berkson, principal with Berkson Associates, and I'm collaborating on this project with Jennifer Stevenson of Policy Consulting Associates. Our firms have worked together for several years on numerous projects. Combined, the two firms have completed hundreds of MSRs of different types of agencies, including sanitary districts and cities, as well as related studies related to fiscal impacts of development, financing studies for capital improvements, and governance studies of potential reorganizations. And of course, as you know, many of those issues do arise in the course of this MSR in particular. The MSR process has been embedded in state law for about 20 years, and the impetus for that originally was a need and desire to create a tool to help LAFCOs improve local public services and make various governance related decisions. And of course, that ultimately is the objective of this MSR report. As Rob said, we're here this afternoon to summarize key findings of the MSR reports. The document itself is fairly lengthy, and of course, will be available to answer any questions as well as we go through it. Okay, at this point, I will I'm sorry, let Jennifer talk a bit about spheres of influence in MSRs and also the approach and methodology that we went through in the course of preparing this document.
Thank you, Richard. I'm sure the commission is well aware of the MSR requirements and sphere of influences, but for the public's purpose, I'd like to provide a little reminder outline on what goes actually into an MSR or municipal service review. The MSR is used to update and inform spheres of influence, and that will occur for these 3 agencies after this review is completed. There is legally required content in an MSR. The commission is required to come to 7 determinations for each of the agencies. These include present and planned capacity of public facilities and adequacy of public services, including infrastructure needs and deficiencies, the location and characteristics of disadvantaged communities, growth and population projections for the affected areas, the financial ability of agencies to provide services, the status of and opportunities for shared facilities, and accountability for community service needs, including governmental structure and operational efficiencies. The content of the report that's in front of you aims to inform these determinations. All of the determinations are summarized at the end of each of the agency's chapters in the report. To date, we've collected information from the agencies through information requests. We've interviewed staff at the agencies, and we've compiled and evaluated the information in their individual chapters. The agencies have had the opportunity to review the chapters and provide comments. Edits were made based on their comments received, and the public review draft was distributed for review. A public workshop was held 2 weeks ago to solicit comment, and we are here today to receive further comment from the public and the commission. There will be one more opportunity at a meeting for the public to submit verbal comment to LAFCo, and then written comment can be submitted through May 5th on this version of the draft. So let's get into it. Our presentation today is once again, high-level findings. And of course, there's a lot more information in the 230 some odd pages of the report. So the first agency is the city of East Palo Alto. It's a general law city incorporated in 1983, covering approximately 2.6 square miles. The city provides a range of services to a population of about 30,000. Services are provided by the city include law enforcement, domestic water services by contract, stormwater drainage services, street maintenance, street lighting, and parks and recreation. Those services are discussed in detail in separate service sections, and related determinations were made for each service. For the purposes of this presentation, we will focus on wastewater collection services provided by East Palo Alto Sanitary District and West Bay Sanitary District, given the high degree of impact the service has on the city and its constituents. Growth within the city has been fairly static over the last 2 decades. There are a number of pending developments that indicates there is great potential for growth that has been planned for in the general plan. As of December 2021, the city had 20 unconstructed development projects in some phase of the application and construction process that totaled almost 1,500 dwelling units and 4.2 million square feet of non-residential building space. Also, the city has received applications for a significant number of accessory dwelling units. The general plan and recent state legislation allows for further increases in development. Until recently, there was a moratorium on new connections to water services, impeding development in the city. But with the repeal of the moratorium in 2018, development was finally able to proceed. However, impediments to development continue to exist, In particular, East Palo Alto Sanitary District continues to report that it lacks collection capacity to serve new construction, and necessary capacity enhancements required by the district for those desiring to connect to the system are exceptionally costly, thus deterring potential developers and preventing some approved projects from being completed. Richard will go into further detail on this in his upcoming slides. In an effort to address this issue, the City of East Palo Alto and the Sanitary District formed an intergovernmental committee that met regularly. However, a solution was not identified and the meetings were put on hold. The city, the district, and the developers have not been able to develop a financing plan satisfactory to all parties, and development continues to be delayed. Because a majority of East Palo Alto Sanitary District ratepayers are also residents of the City of East Palo Alto, I think we calculated it's about 92%. The transition of East Palo Alto Sanitary District to a subsidiary district of the city may be the most practical solution to this challenge. This option would or could align provision of sewer services with other community interests and municipal functions. It could increase community representation in sewer services. It could improve transparency and public outreach. It could result in potential cost savings to ratepayers and improve sewer infrastructure and services. This option will be discussed again in further detail at the end of the presentation. If this option were enacted, and there is the opportunity for the city to contract with West Bay Sanitary District for sewer operations, as opposed to taking on additional staff to provide those services. At this time, I'll take a moment and see if any of the commissioners have questions thus far before we continue.
Is there any questions from any of the commissioners?
I have some questions.
Sure, go ahead, Ann.
I believe the City of East Palo Alto has a good involvement with other agencies or other entities to bring funding into East Palo Alto. And in particularly, I'm thinking of flooding in this, and I didn't see mention of their participation in the San Francisco JPA, although you mentioned the flooding from San Francisco, and East Palo Alto's leadership role on the new One Shoreline special district. And I was wondering if those collaborative efforts to solve local problems could be included in the report. So that's my first comment and request. The second is, if the city wanted to take on the sanitary district, is there an ability to, I'll call it, force the issue, because it's such a critical factor in its growth and development and meeting its housing needs? And I didn't know whether or not any cities have that capacity to force solutions or force incorporation. And I was wondering if you could comment on both of those items.
Most definitely. We make every effort to include collaborative efforts on the part of any agency reviewed. So anything that we were aware of at the time would have been included in the document. But since you mentioned this, we can definitely add that effort and involvement in the JPA regarding flooding. We've gotten a couple of other comments regarding flooding and as well as the grant funds that have come in recently. So we'll be making a few additions to that section of the city's chapter. Regarding whether the city can force the issue, we will be walking through a little bit on what the reorganization process would look like if any of these options were chosen. For formation of a subsidiary district, yes, the city has the ability to initiate the process by resolution and their resolution alone. So yes, there is a way for the city to move forward without support from the district.
Thank you.
Is there any other commissioners that have a question? Oh, I see their hands on. Commissioner Lowen.
I have a question about this whole subsidiary district and what that would entail. If that's going to be described later, then we can talk about it then. I'm concerned that if the city takes over the district, they would be able to raise rates. On page 9 of this document, you folks mentioned several times that it would not be good to raise rates on existing customers. So that would be my concern, is that the city would be able to raise rates for the existing customers.
I can certainly address a portion of that right now. I know that Richard's going to go into further detail once he's talking about East Palo Alto Sanitary District. What a subsidiary district would look like is that the city becomes the governing body, the city council members become the governing body for the district. Requirements are that 70% of the city territory comprise the district and 70% of the voters in order for this to occur.
Okay.
As far as rates are concerned, the reference to not increasing rates is in relation to the requirements for increasing capacity for development purposes. And the idea is that, you know, current ratepayers should not be paying for new development and their needs. Regarding rates as they are, there are concerns about existing infrastructure needs in the system. So there continues to be a question as to whether those rates are adequate or not. But once again, that's not the purpose on the reference in page 9 is with regard to new development and that it should not affect current rates.
Okay.
Right, and I'll just add to what Jennifer said briefly. The city will have the ability to raise rates or modify rates, just as the current district has the ability to do so as well. And of course, it will be subject to the process, the Prop 218 process that governs rate setting. And of course, there's an ability for the residents and the ratepayers to protest any increases, whether it's the city managing the process or the district.
Okay, any follow-up questions, Commissioner Lohman? No? Okay, Commissioner Horsley.
Yeah, I have a question about the lack of sewer capacity impedes new projects. One of the things that I've heard in other meetings between these three agencies, or actually maybe the new projects, is that when they wish to do a new project, they're being told that they have to pay for significant upgrades to the whole system. And they seem to object to that. So I'm wondering, does the does basically the sewer service that they currently have, is it underfunded? And I don't really understand that. Who is responsible for paying for increasing the sewer capacity, and how does that all how does that work? And I guess the other question is, are the rates so low that they're really not maintaining this capacity that they have?
All right, well, those are all excellent questions. And actually, if there aren't any more questions on the City of East Palo Alto's MSR, we can move on to the district, and hopefully your questions will be answered then.
Okay.
If that's okay.
That's okay.
Is there any other commissioners that have a question? Please raise your hand. Okay, we'll move on to, I guess it's the sewer district next.
Okay, great. All right, so again, this is a map showing the East Palo Alto Sanitary District's boundaries in the purple or magenta dashed line. And as you can see, it does cover the majority of the city of East Palo Alto and also picks up a portion of Menlo Park. And as Jennifer mentioned earlier, approximately 92% of the city's of the district's area is within the city of East Palo Alto, and also the number of registered voters follows a similar pattern as well. And it is correct, the district sewer rates are among the lowest in the county. Those rates are $600 per year. The other important point to make is that the district's operations are funded not only by those rates, but also they do get property tax, and that property tax supplements the rate revenue. So that to some extent helps keep the sewer rates at that lower end. Now, the current rates, I'll point out, it's described in the MSR, are actually lower than recommended by the district's 2019 rate study due to a number of reasons. The district has been very cautious about its expenditures. They've reduced or deferred certain expenditures. Perhaps the flip side of that is that it appears that certain capital expenditures and improvements that have been recommended by past district documents and also indicated by more recent studies by the district have not occurred. The district prepared a hydraulic analysis. It was prepared by consulting engineers to the district in a 2021 addendum to its 2015 master plan update. And that addendum did model storm conditions, and it predicted that under existing conditions, that surcharge, in other words, pipes would be completely full, could occur in quite a few locations. And also there was a potential for sewer overflows to occur under that particular storm scenario. And the analysis also calculated and demonstrated that additional flows would be contributed by new development, and those flows would worsen the situation. Now, that addendum also identified various measures that could be taken under existing conditions to expand the pipeline capacity and basically mitigate those negative impacts under storm conditions. And they also identified the additional pipelines that would be needed to serve new development on top of those existing deficiencies. One of the concerns, key concerns, Jennifer touched on also, is that the 2021 addendum, while it does the calculations and identifies improvements, it does not identify priorities, timing of those improvements, potential funding sources, which and nor does it allocate costs between new development and existing development proportionate to their impacts. This table you can find in the MSR, along with additional explanation about the various sources. Now we've compiled this based on a number of sources from the district. There's no single document that includes these costs. I believe that they should be close. You can see the bottom line basically is that 40 million figure. Different numbers have been mentioned in district meetings, 40 to 45 million. Of course, that may depend on exactly what's included in there. You can see at the top of the table, I've segregated it by collection system versus the trunk line and treatment plant. The collection system, the $23 million, 23.9 million almost. Again, that comes from the district's 2021 addendum for the cost of pipeline capacity expansion that would be needed to essentially eliminate the potential for the overflows and surcharging that was identified in that hydraulic analysis. In addition, there is the 8.7 million of additional further expansion that would be required to, on top of the existing improvements, to serve the new development that was analyzed. And also the addendum identified various other improvements that could further reduce the level of flows to targeted levels. I mentioned the trunk line, those costs are included in that 35 million. The treatment plant, there appears to be plenty of capacity for the district's flows currently and also projected certainly in the near term. But nonetheless, that's an item of concern going into the future, depending on the amount of new development that occurs. Then at the bottom of that table, I've included a line for annual repair and replacement. The MSR describes that it appears the district has been spending on average about $500,000 annually on repair and replacement. And that number, of course, varies. And I believe the district targets more like $1 million or more each year. And again, those costs aren't specifically for increasing the capacity of the pipelines, but rather it's for repair and replacement of aging or failing pipelines as they're discovered. And the district is currently or about to undertake a very detailed video inspection of their pipelines, which will help inform that the need for repair and replacement. The MSR also makes the very important point that the district has emphasized that there are funding options that can assure that existing ratepayers do not pay for the impacts caused by new development. The district is very adamant that the current ratepayers do not pay through increased rates or any other mechanism for what is basically a responsibility of developers. And that certainly is a policy and practice that is followed by probably most districts and cities in California and is well established in the law as well. But that being said, again, the MSR has provided a framework and illustration showing that there is certainly the potential to allocate costs in such a way that existing ratepayers are not burdened by new development. And actually, to the contrary, it would be helpful if improvements required to serve existing ratepayers are coordinated and facilitated along with planning for improvements needed to serve new development. And in that fashion, cost efficiencies could be achieved and economies of scale. Now, actually, the specific funding plan and allocations and timing and so forth clearly needs to be worked out by the district and its consultants And the funding sources could include the use of debt, capacity charges, which the MSR recommends should be updating to reflect current development trends, the use of fund balances, and potentially the use of rate revenues without necessarily increasing rates, but there is some capacity through revenues that exceed current operating costs to use those funds for improvements. And of course, developer funding, which the district is currently tapping into and also requesting. The lack of sewer capacity has prevented the district from serving new development that's in the city's master plan. There are probably at least 20 projects that are need will serve letters from the district, but because of the district's lack of sewer capacity, those projects are essentially unable to move forward. And projects range in size, of course, from large scale multifamily projects, affordable housing, as well as lot splits of a single lot. And also more recently, there's been concern raised about the ability to obtain service from the district in order to build an accessory dwelling unit. This stalled development does affect the city and its residents. And again, as we pointed out, the majority of district ratepayers are also city residents. Public tax revenues are lower than they will be if planned development is allowed to move forward. Revenues will be less from service charges. I mentioned affordable housing is included in a number of projects that currently are on hold. And also, of course, commercial development is stalled, resulting in less economic development and jobs. Let's go back. That touches on a very high level overview of the findings related to the district. And so again, we'll pause at this point to address additional questions, or if that hasn't sufficiently answered some of the concerns that were raised earlier. Okay, looks like there's several questions. See Vice Chair Draper.
I have several questions. Thank you. And I'm just going to go through them one by one. Maybe you can answer them.
Sure.
You've recommended a variety of financial aspects that the district could use to get funding. Does the district have a high-level financial officer on board that can help them do it? And the reason I ask is when I worked with at a special district and with cities, we needed that kind of skill and talent to come up with our financing plans. And I don't know, and it didn't say whether there was a high-level financial person on the district that can help them through looking at options.
Okay, no, I don't believe they have that person. I think that that's maybe one of the limitations about keeping rate revenues low, is that it also limits the ability to bring on certain key staff. That being said, of course, they do utilize financial consultants, and there are certainly a lot of consultants out there who do exactly this kind of work, and could be contracted for in the absence of staff that are part of the district.
My second question was, I guess a general concern is that the report may have understated the vulnerabilities of the existing systems. And I have a few topics in there. First, I was struck by the districts, I'll say, how they don't use their CIP for prioritization and planning and rate setting, as you showed on one of the slides. And that's just reminded me that I started working for the city of Santa Clara in 1973, which is quite a number of years ago. And one of the things that I did, I don't work there now, is that I had to evaluate the cities of Santa Clara's CIP and make sure that it implemented the general plan. And so I was aware that it did prioritize projects and all the things that you say that East Bay Sand does not do. And so I think that's sort of a common practice. And in your text, you say several times you refer to best practices. And I think some of the things that they don't do are common practices. And so if you could go through and take a look at those things and really think, are they common practices? Like a lot of cities and special districts do this. This is not just best, it's common. And so is that something that you might be able to do?
Okay, no, that's an excellent point. We'll do the best that we can. We did try to, in taking direction from LAFCo originally when we were hired, do our best to identify at least sources of best practices. And it's a little bit harder, short of doing a survey, to identify common practices. But I agree with you, and it's certainly a concern of mine that most cities and agencies that I've reviewed that are well run and managed do rely heavily on their capital improvement program. And that being said, the costs are potentially quite substantial, but the burden needn't fall entirely on the existing ratepayers, nor entirely on new development. And as you point out, a capital improvement program is at least the starting point, but it does need those additional components. And the SSMP guidelines, that's sewer system master plan guidelines that have been issued statewide, do identify a number of those, including the financing plan and funding sources and so forth. So I agree, it's very important. And I also agree with the concern about the current system's vulnerabilities. Now, I think there's still some lack of clarity on that topic, and the MSR recommends, among other things, that the district try to clarify the apparent disjoint between the hydraulic analysis that, to me, and not being an engineer, still clearly identifies that there is the potential for the surcharging and overflows. I think the district's position is that that's a theoretical analysis, that in fact there haven't been overflows in the past several years, and that the actual risk to existing ratepayers is minimal. But nonetheless, it should be resolved, because those costs and that analysis is the basis for substantial costs that are being requested that new development pay. So it is a concern, and it certainly should be clarified one way or the other, so the public and ratepayers can better understand the risks and also the options.
So you're getting into my next question, and that has to do with asset management. When you're an agency that has assets, you need to manage those. Mm-hmm. And there are some assets, and I'll use a silly example, like a light bulb. It goes out, you can run that to failure, and it fails, and you put a new one in. But there are other assets that you can't say, oh, we're just going to run them to failure. These trunk lines are old, and the types of the way they were constructed is old, and they fail. And even though they haven't failed yet, a policy of run to failure would have catastrophic impact on existing ratepayers an existing community from a health and safety standpoint. And so it did not seem to me that the district had policies about asset management for existing systems in terms of at some point you can maintain them, but at some point you have to replace them. And as people know, I used to work for a flood control special district, and we maintained a lot, but at some point you had to replace, which is expensive. And so it's important to prioritize those things. And is there a way to describe what apparently is going on in terms of asset management related to the health of the existing trunk lines due to their age? And it's like a roof. If a roof is a 30-year roof, you can put tar and gooey stuff on top, but at some point your whole house may collapse. And so if you don't replace the roof. So is there a way to better capture the vulnerability of the existing system on the health and safety of the residents and their financial situation?
Right. Well, first, I agree with what you've said about asset management. And there is, as you probably know, there is a practice and a discipline specifically related to developing asset management plans, which basically do exactly what you're referring to. Now, I also agree, and it does seem consistent with or common with many other agencies, that age is a factor. Now, we did ask the district about that because we have seen references in previous documents to the aging system, and the district apparently does not or could not provide us with an inventory of the pipelines and their ages. I believe it exists. It's possible that it either hasn't been maintained or just wasn't readily available. In any event, that's obviously important to consider. Also, when we asked the district about that issue, I believe their position is that age is not a primary factor in planning for the replacement of pipelines. There are many other factors that go into that. And again, I'm not an engineer, but that's not consistent with my understanding and what I've learned over the years about planning for asset management. So anyhow, in the revisions to the MSR, we can certainly include some at least brief discussion about asset management plans and what they entail. And again, in my view, I think this is one issue that we see repeatedly with relatively small districts, or at least districts with limited revenues, is that they can't afford to do the sort of planning that goes into an asset management plan, although ironically, it may be one of the most important functions that they actually should undertake. But anyhow, I appreciate your comments, and in our revisions to the MSR, we'll take those into account and see if there's some way we can further clarify or emphasize the concerns you've expressed.
My concern was there was such a focus on low rates that they may be putting their existing customers in a vulnerable situation for collapse of the system. And that finishes my comments. Thank you. Thank you for your reply.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Cosgrove.
Thank you. Chairman O'Neill, this is kind of actually a question for you, I think. This is a process question. We're going to open it to the public, correct? And then my question is, after that, will the commission then be able to comment at that point? Because I would prefer to wait till after the public comments.
Yeah, I was just thinking, does the commission want to have public comments after we finish each entity, or just all at the end? What's the commission's pleasure?
I think we should listen to all the MSRs because they're all interrelated, and let the public comment then, and then let deliberations from the commission take place.
Okay. Is that the preference of the majority?
Yes.
I'm
Yes,
good with that. Yeah.
Okay, okay, all right, so then, okay, so my question is in regards to governance to the consultant. Is I notice a portion of the East Palo Alto Sanitary District goes into Menlo Park. If it becomes a subsidiary of East Palo Alto, how will the residents of Menlo Park have any representation in the sewer district?
Okay, no, that's an excellent question. And as you point out, and it's shown on the maps, there is a portion of Menlo Park that is part of the district. And that is one concern about subsidiary districts that include areas outside of the city itself. So that's certainly a consideration. Jennifer, do you have anything else to add on that topic?
It is a consideration. An option that was identified in the MSR is maintaining the current board as some kind of advisory committee or commission to the city council, so that they may provide input from the board's point of view and suggestions. So obviously, the city council would be the ultimate decider. But in that way, those areas that are not within the city boundaries could continue to have some kind of representation that informs city council decisions.
In the MSR, was it exclusively East Palo Alto you looked at, or did you also take into consideration what might be happening in Menlo Park?
Our analysis was specific to East Palo Alto.
Okay, so even though it was part of the sanitary district, you really didn't, your emphasis was East Palo Alto, not, and Menlo Park was just kind of there.
We, in regard to the sanitary district, reviewed the entirety of the territory within its boundaries and the services offered in all areas. With regard to the structure option, it was specific to East Palo Alto, being that similar threshold requirements weren't met in Menlo Park.
Okay, so basically a lot of the concerns you've raised are applicable to the Menlo Park portion. Okay.
Yes, if I can, Chair, yeah, that is correct. We did look at the area that's in Menlo Park for how it would interplay with EPAC currently and with any other future governance options. We did not look at a full study for the city of East Palo Alto. We did look at if there was any development proposed, though, within the EPAC service area for Menlo Park.
Okay. Would it be something to consider that the rest of Menlo Park's handled by the West Bay Sanitary District? I'm assuming. Would it be something to consider if we move forward with this, that portion goes to West Bay Sanitary District, or is that a impossibility? Just for cleaner lines, you know what I mean? Or is that something to talk about later?
Yeah, and I think we have a slide that will talk a bit more about the options, and something similar to what you described has been raised and considered certainly in the past, but that could be one of the options. There are some potential issues with that, but we'll talk a bit more about that.
Okay, Commissioner Horsley, you have your hand up.
Muted.
there you go.
Don, you're muted.
I got it. I figured that out finally. Where I live is unincorporated Emerald Hills. It's about the same population as El Granada. But our water and sanitation come from the city of Redwood City. We don't have any, the city of Redwood City either. And then Woodside has, to some extent, have water from the city of Redwood City. So the idea of, a city having an enterprise district like a sanitation or water in another city is not particularly unusual.
Yes, I would agree with you. It is fairly common to see that in multiple parts of the state.
Right, and one point that can be made is that the boundaries of the sewer district were in existence before the city of East Palo Alto was formed. And those boundaries generally follow topography and kind of logical areas of service and flows and so forth. So that is one issue with some of the options related to splitting up the current district, and that it could create additional complexity with how sewer is handled by different entities.
Any other, Commissioner Lohman?
Yes, I just wanted to give another example. On the coast here, we have El Granada, or Granada Community Services District, which serves part of Half Moon Bay. So that is a common thing. And again, as the consultant described it, often the sanitary district's boundaries are drawn before the anything else is drawn. So that is a common thing, and we have it here on the coast. So.
Okay. All right, any other comments from commissioners? Okay, next is West Bay Sanitary District. You're on.
Right, okay, Jennifer, let me jump down. Okay.
West Bay Sanitary District is a regional sanitary sewer provider for the city of Menlo Park and portions of Atherton, East Palo Alto, Portola Valley, Redwood City, Woodside, and then some South County unincorporated areas and several parcels actually that are in Santa Clara County. The district provides sewage collection as a direct service and sewage treatment through its membership in the Silicon Valley Clean Water, as well as garbage collection in certain unincorporated areas within its boundaries through franchise agreement with Recology. And that's as a member of the South Bayside Waste Management Authority. In 2014, the district began contracting to provide services to the town of Los Altos Hills and the town of Woodside for sanitary sewer operations and maintenance. The district serves approximately 19,500 residential customers and 625 commercial customers with approximately 216 miles of sewer main. So it's quite expansive. The district demonstrated a very high level of transparency and accountability by complying with all related legal requirements. It's a recipient of the District Transparency Certificate of Excellence, which is from the Special District Leadership Foundation. The districts have also established the Open Government section, which is charged with ensuring transparency and easy access by the public. Operationally, based on overflow rates, regulatory compliance, preventative maintenance practices, speed of response times to customer reports of issues, and the number and type of complaints related to wastewater services, the district provides an adequate level of wastewater collection services. West Bay does have a peaking factor of 5, which is flow during a wet weather event. That's moderately high according to industry standards, but has not been identified as an issue for the system. The pipes are reportedly demonstrate sufficient capacity during wet weather, and hydraulic models do not show bottlenecks. The district has completed significant capital projects that greatly reduce infiltration and inflow into their system in areas of concern. And it continues a regular capital program of continual rehabilitation and replacement aimed at further I&I reduction. Because the district's master plan is almost 10 years old and many improvements have been made since the hydraulic assessment was conducted, it's unclear the degree to which flows are at or nearing capacity and which segments are most impacted. However, they are going through the process of updating and it will be addressed in the 2022 master plan. With regard to governance structure options, as already mentioned, if a subsidiary district is formed, as discussed, then West Bay could provide contract services similar to how it is with the two towns mentioned. Also, at present, the territory of East Palo Alto Sanitary District is located within West Bay Sanitary District's sphere of influence, indicating that LAFCo anticipated the territory presently within East Palo Alto Sanitary District to be annexed to West Bay Sanitary District and East Palo Alto Sanitary District dissolved. West Bay has indicated that while it's able to take on those services, that it would not be willing to pursue a reorganization without the agreement of East Palo Alto Sanitary District. So does the commission have any questions at this time?
Is there any of the commissioners raise their hand? Okay, I don't see any hands raised. So I guess the next step would be.
Wait.
Oh, sure.
Could you
Go ahead, Don.
Could you repeat that last statement that West Bay Sanitary wouldn't be willing to if unless the district were an agreeable? What's that again?
That option of West Bay Sanitary District annexing the territory of East Palo Alto Sanitary District, that West Bay indicated that it's capable of taking those services on. However, they would not be willing to pursue the reorganization without the agreement of East Palo Alto Sanitary District.
Okay, thank you.
We do have two further slides regarding governance options and a little bit about process.
Okay, go ahead and then we'll go to you, Ann, after these.
Great, thank you. Yes, just two more slides. These things have been mentioned briefly earlier, but when the city of East Palo Alto was formed, LAFCo designated that the district would have a zero or dissolution sphere of influence. Again, that was signaling the intent that eventually the district would be dissolved and its services integrated with another provider. We've also touched on the concept that we believe there are other governance options that could align sewer services with other community needs and municipal functions. And there's been some discussion about options. We've listed them here. Of course, in addition to the status quo option, which is basically don't change the current structure. The option of forming a subsidiary district is a possibility. Again, it will take a number of actions by various entities, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. And the city, if it did form a subsidiary district, as Jennifer mentioned, the city council would act as the board. It could create an advisory structure as well to get input from all residents of the subsidiary district. The city could decide if it had the capacity to actually operate the system, or alternatively, it could possibly contract with West Bay for services. Another option mentioned is annexation of East Palo Alto Sanitary District sewer district territory by West Bay. And as Jennifer pointed out, that was not something that West Bay was interested in unilaterally pursuing at this time. The third bullet addresses dissolution of the district and alignment of service areas with the cities of Menlo Park and East Palo Alto. And the MSR does describe some of the issues with that approach that were also discussed in, I believe, in the 2008 MSR, that because those cities, to some extent, send their flows to different treatment plants, and there are different agreements and so forth. Those things introduce additional complexities. Another option that has come up during the course of the MSR that was at least mentioned is the possibility of detaching certain portions of the district that could develop and have those annexed by West Bay. And again, it's not clear if West Bay would be agreeable to that, and that approach also creates other problems with the kind of piecemeal approach. And we believe it could have adverse implications for the financial capacity of East Palo Alto sewer district by giving up some of the benefits of that new development. So Jennifer, can you talk a bit about the specific reorganization process?
Right, I'll just provide a quick summary here is that the process for these options to be implemented is fairly similar with some slight differences depending on the desired outcome. In particular, there are differences between the formation of a subsidiary district and the annexation by West Bay and subsequent dissolution in those two processes. The primary difference is the manner in which the process may be initiated. So for a subsidiary district proposal, it may be initiated by petition, by resolution by an affected agency, which is the city, or resolution by LAFCo. The annexation and dissolution option can only be initiated by resolution of the affected agency. In this case, because it's an annexation and dissolution, it would also need a resolution from the district itself. And then, or can be initiated by petition of the public. The application would then be processed according to LAFCo law. And then upon approval by LAFCo, the application would go through protest proceedings process, giving the public the option to protest the approval. If the protest meets a certain threshold, then it could force an election. And these protest proceedings are actually under revision right now by the California State Legislature. So it could be changing, but it's just with regard to the protest provision portions of these processes. And that's back to you there, Richard.
Thank you. All right, next steps, of course, following this hearing, like I said, we're hoping for additional public review and comment on the draft report that's been circulated, and LAFCo has established a deadline of May 5th for receiving those comments. And based on the comments LAFCo receives and that we've heard in these in the workshop and this hearing, we'll make revisions to the draft. And there is a LAFCo hearing scheduled for June 15th, at which time LAFCo could adopt the final report. And then, of course, as Jennifer reviewed, the various steps that are involved in reorganization, if those occur, of course, that's after adoption of the MSR. So that concludes our presentation at this point, and we're still available for questions.
Hey, Commissioner Draper, you've had your hand up.
Yes, I'm not saying this is a preferred option. I'm just wondering if it is an option. And that is, did the state create the East Bay Sanitary District? And if they did, sort of like what they're doing in Florida, or think about doing in Florida, can the state of California also dissolve or reform this special district with an act of the legislature?
Jennifer, do you want to address that?
Yep. So to my knowledge, the sanitary district was formed by LAFCo. There are certain times when the state legislature becomes involved in mandating the formation or dissolution of a special district. I would say in general, it is the practice to maintain LAFCO authority regarding the formation and dissolution of special districts.
So the state did not create this special district. Okay, that's really, okay, got it. Thanks.
Okay, is there any other commissioners that have any questions or concerns? And then, well, if not, we'll open up the public hearing. Okay, I don't see anybody, so I would encourage everybody that's on that wishes to speak to please raise their hand. Clerk, can you please read to us any written comments received? And then also anybody that might have joined us by phone, if you can go over the star line 9 and stuff like that.
Thank you, Chairman. So I would like to remind members of the public that if they are calling by phone, they may press star 9 to indicate their desire to speak. And right now I do see 4 virtual hands raised, Chair. So I will first call on Matt Schreiber from Eden Housing.
Hello, can you hear me? Hi,
Yes, we
my name
can.
is Matt Schreiber. I'm the project developer for Light Tree Apartments with Eden Housing. This afternoon, I'm here to support the committee's acceptance of the draft MSR and to emphasize that without LAFCo action, Light Tree Apartments is at risk of having 91 vacant affordable apartments due to non-performance by the sanitary district. Eden and EPA Can-Do own and operate 217 units of affordable housing within city of East Palo Alto limits. Eden is also exploring new sites within the city to build an additional 150 units for households earning less than 60% AMI. Throughout the development process, the city continues to be a critical mediator between affordable housing developers and the sanitary district. In 2020, it took the city council convening an intergovernmental committee to get parties to a $2.5 million wastewater services agreement referenced on page 139 to avoid losing $20 million in state funding. However, despite the enormous effort by council members and city staff, despite Light Tree paying the $2.5 million fee in September 2020, despite a signed service agreement in which Section 7 holds the district had sufficient funds to cover its share, the sanitary district has now returned to the city to request additional funding to build the improvements, and our $20 million award is again at risk. Given our experiences so far, Eden has strong reservations about its ability to build affordable housing in East Palo Alto under the status quo. At the end of the day, Light Tree's lenders, investors, and most importantly, its residents trusted that when EPASD deposited the check for $2.5 million, the agreement brokered by the city would ensure a timely construction of the improvements. It is now clear the sanitary district needs the city to continue to be a financial backstop and development liaison. I believe there can be great efficiencies gained through consolidation, and therefore urge the committee to formalize what has already unofficially been occurring and direct city management and oversight of the sanitary sewer system to allow the city's development pipeline to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now call on Jeff Poich, followed by Mr. Akin. Mr. Poich, please accept this request. Unmute your microphone and begin speaking.
Hi, my name's Jeff Page. I'm the president of the Ravenswood Shores Business District. I want to as well support the acceptance of the MSR review. I think that it's hard for the LAFCo board members to understand the harm that has already occurred in the city of East Palo Alto due to kind of the systematic failures of the East Palo Alto Sanitary District to address known problems with their ability to provide adequate service capacity. We've had 2 significant abandoned projects, the primary school on Week Street, as well as the not-for-profit resource center that was being proposed by John Sobrato and by the Ravenswood Family Health Collective. Both of those are now abandoned, not going to go forward. We have stalled projects that have been mentioned, whether this is 965 Week Street, an affordable housing project, or the Center for Economic Mobility, which is a 100,000 square foot Emerson project to, again, support not-for-profits. And then as well was just mentioned, we have the projects where an agreement was reached with the East Palo Alto Sanitary District to provide services, and then later the district is elected to not abide by those agreements. The sanitary district was obligated to provide sewer capacity, sewer connections to Light Tree by March of this year. They had 18 months after the receipt of funds and they haven't done it. So I really think that I would appreciate if the board of LAFCo could move forward expeditiously and support the acceptance of the MSR. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now call on Mr. Atkin, followed by Mr. Dennis Scherzer.
Good evening, honorable commissioners. The 2 minutes allotted is not actually enough for my comments, but I will try as much as possible. With regards to the Light Tree project, the information provided is not accurate. The sequel analysis of the Light Tree project was done by the city, and the consultant of the city came back to the district and told the district that that sequel analysis is not correct, that the project will need Section 404 permit. Without Section 404 permit, you cannot implement the project. So this is an error that was made by the city, not the district. I just want to correct that for the record. Secondly, the consultant mentioned that that the district have excess revenue over cost, and that excess revenue over cost should be used for development. That is against the law. If you use excess revenue over cost for development projects, you are indirectly subsidizing development and is regarded as a gift of public funds. Thirdly, the consultant also mentioned that certain aspects of the district can be cut over and given to Melo Park. Hydraulically, this is not feasible. If you want to do that, it's going to cost a lot of money because you have to change the hydraulic of the system. The consultant did not mention that. Thirdly, I also want to mention about the prioritization. You cannot, when you have existing customers and new customers, I've never seen it in my 35 years experience where existing customers pay for development projects. I've never seen it. This is what I've been doing for 35 years. In California, I've practiced for 25 years. And I've never seen in a special district, when I was working for the El Dorado Irrigation District, we work with the Serrano developers. We never do that. So I just want the commissioners to be careful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Atkin. I will now call on Dennis Scherzer, followed by Patrick Heisenger. Mr. Scherzer?
All right, thank you. I want to say, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
I want to relate to the board that this, I'm pretty sure they're going to approve this draft, and I want them to realize some of the things it contains. First of all, the best option, as proven by the draft, is status quo. We're over 80 years old, this district, and it was formed by the Works Progress Administration back in 1939. I don't know if there was any LAFCo involvement then or not. And it's a sovereign local government that we've created and maintained for ourselves. The MSR ranks our services equal to West Bay. Look at page 88. It says wastewater services provided by East EPA and West Bay within the city appear to be adequate based on the analysis of this report, Mr. Bergson. And we have very good, excellent audit, which that's not mentioned in the report. Now, we did do that update to the master plan, September 2021. We've added new flow metering devices to start to plan and gather in engineering data for flow monitoring, and then we're work in progress televising entire lines. Now, the city of East Palo Alto, when you read about it, they tell you that in the 39-year history that the city of East Palo Alto has managed the storm drains. In here, you say in the report, it's adequate. They let the pumping station fall into disrepair. You also mentioned what you showed there, that West Bay hasn't updated their master plan. I guess they're just getting around to it. So that's okay, but us being in progress isn't okay. The reason you recommend that West Bay take over the operations and maintenance is because the city has proven that it can't maintain the storm drains or the water system. They can't handle the management of underground utilities. So the status quo is best and embellished by removing the dissolution aspect, which you haven't proven is a real thing. We don't have a 1983 report on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scherzer. I will now call on Patrick Heisenger, followed by Gail Wilkerson. Mr. Heisenger?
Thank you. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, Patrick Heisenger, Assistant City Manager with the City of East Palo Alto. First, I just really want to thank everybody's time. I know this has been a multi-year effort, and we really appreciate it. I also want to give a shout out to your Chief Executive, Rob Bartoli, who came last night to City Council and actually presented to really give the City Council some high-level information. It was really great. From the city's perspective, obviously, we've really been asking for some progress. And I could say unequivocally that we are in the exact same position today as we were 3.5 years ago. What's troubling about that is the city of East Palo Alto really is on the verge of finally being able to really, start to take care of itself from a financial perspective, right? We have a very solid general plan. We have, developers finally willing to develop in East Palo Alto. Those are tough discussions when projects are approved and whatnot, but when those projects are approved, that can actually improve the tax base, that can bring more jobs into East Palo Alto. There's a benefit there. We are right now currently in our budget season, we are in a deficit, like a lot of jurisdictions are. These projects that would have already been approved by now would have absolutely helped East Palo Alto's general fund, which, as folks know, can pay for more roads, sewers, things like that. I want to be really clear that the city of East Palo Alto, we're not perfect. Like any city, we definitely have huge infrastructure needs with water, with stormwater, with, roads and whatnot. But we do have plans. We have specific plans. We have capital improvement plans. We have water asset management plans, or every plan that you can think of we have, and other policy guiding documents. And our city council takes those plans very seriously. The city council has invested, tens of millions of dollars in its water infrastructure, in negotiating with Mountain View, really to protect its own destiny. In addition to that, my time ran out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heisenger. I will now call on Gail Wilkerson, followed by Christopher Cow.
Hi, Council. My name is Gail Wilkerson. I've been a citizen number one since 1955. So I'm not a new person to the area. But I'd like to correct some of the things that one of the speakers said about the primary school failed. That's because Ms. Zuckerberg was offered Brentwood Elementary School. It's already built out. So she decided to move there. And as far as Sobrato exiting, Sobrato has several projects in East Palo Alto that were done successfully. In fact, they reneged on one where they were supposed to supply business owner. They gave East Palo Alto $1 million to get out of that. The other thing that was told to us in several meetings by Mr. Slocum, he said that we should hold San Mateo County to task because they dumped the shambles in our lap. All the infrastructure and a lot of the flooding that went on there wasn't handled properly by the county. It flooded all the time. And in fact, it's still flooding back there after all these decades. It's ridiculous. like they said, all politics are local. This is just political, a move. And you hear rumors all the time on social media about the cost. Mr. Aiken putting $2 million in his pocket, that he received his engineering degree from New Guinea. And it's been going on, and we're kind of like tired of that in East Palo Alto. So I don't know about your MSR. It's not accurate.
Thank you. I will now call on Christopher Cao, followed by Victor Dong.
Hi, this is Chris. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank
Hi,
you.
my name is Chris. I'm a resident of East Palo Alto. I live in the Ravenswood Business District, actually within like a 1 or 2 minute walking distance to several of the projects named. 965 Week Street, the nonprofit resource center next to the Ravenswood Health Clinic, and also where the primary school would have been, just live 2 streets down. I've personally been very frustrated about how many of these projects have been approved for the last 2 or 3 years, particularly affordable housing, 965 Weeks and the Light Street apartments. From talking to developers, people in the city, and neighbors, it does seem like the Sanitary district has been kind of like the gatekeeper holding back a lot of these projects. And I would personally just love to see more housing developed in the city. I think I remember when I was reading through the 200 or so page report, there was a listing of the number of housing units that were built each year. It's like 10 or 15 each year in East Palo Alto. And now we're on the cusp of being able to get in close to 100 or more than 100 housing units a year if we can get everything aligned. And I just, as a resident, I'd love to see more housing because things are definitely getting more expensive for everyone here. Those are all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I will next call on Victor Dong, followed by Ruben Abrica. Mr. Dong?
Hi, my name is Victor, and I own a small piece of vacant land, ½ acre, and I worked in the past 5 years to subdivide it to 4 single-family units. And I'm here to support LAFCo to adopt MSR and end the nightmare for many of us. I just cannot believe after 5 years after I got all clearance from all other department, planning, building, fire, and get the entitlement done. And then the building told me get the sewer clearance from EPASD. And I thought it's just a simple go pay the fee and started the building. And I went there, and it's last March, it's middle of the pandemic, when all other departments are all working online and digitally. The EPASD asked me to come to office in person, talk with General Manager Akin, and I need to have a paper print copy. And then I just found out my nightmare starts. And Akin first asked for a hydraulic analysis, and I got a quote from his referral, which over $10,000. When I told him I'd consult with my civil engineer said, wow, that thing is so simple. He can do it in 15 minutes for free, since he already worked on my project. And when I asked Akin if I can do that using my own civil engineer, Akin just simply changed his word. He said, no matter what I do, he won't approve my project of 4 single-family house. And unless I pay $14 million to fund the whole city sewer upgrade. And only after the upgrade is done, and he will approve my $6 million project. I cannot believe this is a solution for the so-called professional civil engineer and the Bay Area top paid sanitary manager. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now call on Councilmember Ruben Abrica, followed by the last hand, which is MHB. Mr. Abrica?
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, yes. Okay. Thank you. I'm currently serving as mayor of the city of East Palo Alto. And a couple of months ago, I reached out to the chair of the sanitary district because I believe it's important to keep communicating, particularly in this case, because I'm very concerned, the council is very concerned about the light tree project, where there is a contract that was signed by the sanitary district and all the parties involved. And, you know, we had a couple of meetings. They were kind of difficult meetings, but they were good meetings. And as a result of that, I came to understand that perhaps there was some misunderstanding about the CEQA process. It turns out we have the same consultant for the city and the sanitary district. And she identified a way in which we can resolve this problem. We then openly in a public meeting, the city council agreed to send forward a proposal to the sanitary district to develop a memorandum of understanding. It is very important, as several people have said, the district had already committed itself contractually to provide the services, and they haven't done so. And so I hope that the district will respond to our request in a way in which we do not kill this project. And there is no need for that. And I just hope that the sanitary district board and its executive director will reach out and agree so that we can solve this problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Abrica. I will now call on MHB, which is the last virtual hand I see raised for public comment on item number 4. Please accept this request. Unmute your microphone, and if you can please identify yourself.
Hi, my name is Mark Hayden Bryman. I am a local resident and a real estate professional. I think it's critical that we clearly have a very large housing problem in the region. Not just market rate housing, not just affordable housing, but all of it. We need all of that. And each community has to participate in that. Not only is the passing of this going to help the East Palo Alto community, but it's going to create the critical housing that we need. Now we've got a stalemate and we seem to have shut the whole thing down. There's got to be some sort of solution or compromise to get this thing going. No, developers should not get a free ride, of course not. But should they shoulder every single deferred maintenance that exists in the sewer department at East Palo Alto? That is not fair either. So it seems that we've got to move beyond this stalemate, and we've got to figure something out that is going to be fair and make sense to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chairman, I do not see any more hands raised for this item.
Okay, I will close the hearing in regards to hands being raised. Was there any written comments, Angela?
We did not receive any written public comment, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for deliberation. Commissioner Cosgrove.
Thank you very much, Chair O'Neill. Thank you to the consultant and staff for your hard work bringing this draft in front of us. And also all the members of the public that just made comments. A couple of questions. East Palo Alto Sanitary District. It seems to me like this came to us when it did because of development and sewer connection fees. And I heard the consultant, I think a couple of times, mention that East Palo Alto Sanitary District's fees are exceptional. I think I heard that. So it's common practice, correct me if I'm wrong, for there to be a sewer connection fee for new development to have to pay some sort of connection fee. So why is what East Palo Alto Sanitary District, why is it exceptional?
Yeah, I'll respond to that. No, I don't believe the MSR says that their connection fees are exceptional. I think they're probably more or less in line with other similar districts and agencies. However, those fees were developed a number of years ago, well, 2018, I believe. And that was a time when there was, the district had not determined the additional infrastructure that it says it currently needs. And there wasn't the backlog of development at that time either. So the MSR does recommend that the district review and update its capacity charges as one potential source of probably several to help address certain infrastructure issues. Their annual sewer rates for service are among the lowest in the county. I'm not sure if that's what you were referring to.
No, I was talking about sewer connection fees. New development, typically it has to pay some sort of fee to connect to the system. The existing ratepayers per Prop 218 should not have to subsidize that. So what I'm hearing is that the sanitary district is in line with other similar agencies.
Generally speaking, and that issue was reviewed when the connection charges were updated in 2018. And at that time they were in line. And as I said, of course, every district is unique in its own needs and situations. So that's one reason why, regardless of how they compare, it still would be prudent to update those charges as part of an overall comprehensive financing plan.
Yes.
And Commissioner Cosgrove, and maybe Richard, you can speak to it as well. Maybe part of the issue is the question about the balance and what the existing deficiencies are, or if there are existing deficiencies, what those costs are allocated for existing ratepayers, and what the cost for new development and how those costs are allocated. I think there is, as mentioned in the MSR, there is recommendations about clarification between what existing deficiencies there are, if there are any, and how those could be funded and prioritized. And then the separate question of the new developments, how those are funded and paid for, and what the developer's share of that is. So I don't know, Richard, do you want to speak more about that? If that helps Commissioner Cosgrove's question.
Yes, no, thank you, Rob. That's correct. And that's something that is recommended that the district clarify, because there is that apparent discrepancy between the analysis that they performed in 2021 and their identified need to make improvements to serve existing residents. The MSR does provide an illustrative framework whereby the district could use various sources from both existing residents and new development, while recognizing that funds from existing residents, which may include any excess revenues, that those funds should be limited to improvements that serve those residents. The MSR does not recommend or suggest in any way that existing residents pay for or subsidize improvements for new development. But as I pointed out, the costs are substantial in total for the whole system, which is why it could be valuable for existing residents to help fund their share of remediating existing deficiencies at the same time that funds are obtained from new development for the additional capacity on top of that that's required. And I think both existing residents and the developers would benefit from an arrangement similar to that. So I don't know if those responses help answer your question, Commissioner Cosgrove.
Well, it kind of led to another question that I had, but
sure.
I mean, what I'm trying to wrap my head around is, what is East Bay Sanitary District as far as what so they're required to, have the developer pay to connect to the system, because that's the existing residents, the ratepayer has paid for that system and it was built for the existing residents. So if there's new additional flow, then the district itself is required to levy some fee for them to connect, and that's prudent, and that's what every agency pretty much does.
Right.
And so I'm trying to think, well, if governance has changed, what's going to change? The fee may be a little different. Maybe the analysis might be a little different in the calculation of the fee, but there's going to be a fee.
Right, right. No, there are challenges no matter who's in charge of the system. There's no doubt about that. But in my view, having two separate entities, one dealing with sewer capacity, another dealing with land use, complicates and makes more difficult the ability to come to resolution and balance the interests. So again, you're absolutely right. The costs don't necessarily change. However, currently, I think the district has not taken the steps that would be prudent to come up with a financing plan that does balance the interests of existing ratepayers and new development. So basically, nothing will happen until there is additional planning that occurs. And I believe the city is certainly motivated to do that. I think the district, as I mentioned, is motivated and to some extent rightly so to keep rates low. But there is some question about whether that is being done at the expense of not moving forward on improvements that they have identified, as well as improvements funded by developers.
Yeah, and so I want to, and then my next question is about the term discrepancy. There's a discrepancy that is in, can you go into that again? Because again, this document's like 250 pages or something. I tried to read as much as I could, but it was hard. What's this discrepancy that I'm hearing?
Right, no, I appreciate that. I referred to a 2021 hydraulic analysis that the district commissioned by an engineering firm. And that hydraulic analysis ran a scenario with under certain storm conditions. And the results showed that under existing conditions, there was the potential for surcharging, in other words, pipes to flow more than 100% to occur on quite a few of their lines, and the potential for overflows to occur at, I think, at least 30 or more manhole locations. And
I'm sorry, during wet weather events, so storm events?
Yes, during a wet weather event.
And
during
what
a
kind?
10-year, 24-hour storm, according to the engineers.
Okay.
So yes, they did specify that storm event, and that is during wet weather conditions.
10-year, 24-hour storm event.
Yes. Now the discrepancy is that the district also states, well, let me back up. The district does use those conclusions in coming up with the $40+ million of cost that they are requesting developers pay, which is the cost that includes both remediating existing deficiencies as well as remediating the additional flows. So the discrepancy is that the district has said that they don't need to expand the capacity of the pipelines currently because they don't feel there is actually a risk to existing ratepayers. The district has indicated that the wet weather event and the analysis that was done is a theoretical analysis, and that in fact the risk to existing ratepayers is minimal. And that is why, one reason why the district is not moving forward with any capital improvements, which, as I said, in turn could then be built upon, utilized and expanded by new development.
Okay, well, so then isn't kind of the question then, what do you design your system to? So do you design your system to a 10-year, 24-hour storm event? It sounds to me like the sanitary district has said that is in their analysis so far, that's not what they would design their system to. You know, maybe they would, because, you know, they would choose some other number. I don't know. But isn't it, what is the industry standard for that? Is it a 10-year, 24-hour storm event?
Well, first of all, I will acknowledge that I'm not an engineer, and one of the recommendations of the MSR is that the district review its hydraulic analysis and the assumptions that go into it. And there are a lot of assumptions. I think the district has taken a conservative position as far as I can tell, and perhaps there's good reason for that. They have stated that under those design conditions that the results provide a guideline for new development to build to, that when new development comes in, they should adhere to those guidelines and standards. But at the same time, the district has said that it's not necessary to be concerned about those results of that analysis today, that in fact, there is minimal risk to existing ratepayers. So yes, I agree with you. I think that the storm conditions certainly merit some review and considerations by a third-party consulting engineer, for instance. But that is where the discrepancy comes in.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Let's see. And then I didn't see it, so forgive me if I missed it, but is there any documentation or anything in the MSR about the number of sanitary sewer overflows from this district or West Bay? You know, I think the industry standard is roughly per 100 miles of sewer lines, something along those lines.
Mm-hmm. Right. I know Jennifer looked at that, and we also looked at state reports. There have been no reported overflows from East Palo Alto Sanitary District over the past at least 5 years. It may be a longer period of time. I don't recall, Jennifer. So yes, we did look at those, and in fact, there have not been overflows reported by the district in recent years.
Okay, well, that's really good. I mean, when you get to, you know, what's the best way to evaluate, you know, an agency operating a sanitary sewer system, sanitary sewer overflows would be one of the key things you look at. They're supposed to protect the public health, and you know that's one of the reasons why you really have to evaluate development, because if they are going to provide flow that's greater than the capacity of what you have existing, well, you're definitely increasing your risk for sanitary sewer overflows. Let's see. I appreciate the talk about governance and well, actually a question. The sphere of influence update, is it basically the same from I think it was 2009, the last time it was done? Is basically the sphere of influence determination going to be the same? Maybe that
would be up to the commission. Yes, I think that would be good.
Well, Rob, what you are going to present.
Yeah, so what's presented in the MSR is very similar to what was in the 09-08 MSR report for the sphere of influence. So there's additional detail, probably about some of the governance options and additional theoretical findings that could be in there for what the process could look like, or a little more sounding on why something may not be plausible or some of the challenges with it. But it's likely that they will be very similar to the 08-09 report.
All right, thank you. I think that kind of wraps up. I guess just a comment is, you know, from what I'm hearing, again, this is a lot of information to try to review, but East Palo Alto Sanitary District, West Bay Sanitary District appear to be operating their systems well. Obviously, there's room for improvement here or there, but that's kind of what I am seeing in the information, and I look forward to the next discussion and any other updated information. But thank you.
Commissioner Horsley.
Yeah, I don't agree that the system is operating well at all. You know, You have an engineer tells you that you have a system that's inadequate, has deficiencies, and just because they deny it doesn't, it's like they're not, that just doesn't make any sense to me. In any case, it's pretty clear they have like 23.9 million in a capital improvement plan, and they haven't acted on it. So, it's one thing, they're keeping their rates artificially low. They have a system that, they have a capital improvement plan that isn't being acted on. It has a deficiency of almost $24 million. I mean, how you could say that this is operating well is beyond me. In any case, after hearing from other commissioners, I'd be willing to make the motion to approve the draft recommendation or draft the draft municipal service review for both City of East Palo Alto Sanitary District and West Bay Sanitary District. I think it was really well done. Thanks.
I'd be willing to
Okay.
second that.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. We did have Commissioner Warback put his hand up. Vice and Draper has hers, and Commissioner Cosgrove has his up again. So first we'll go to Commissioner Warback, Draper, and then back to Cosgrove.
I agree with Don Horsley. From what I've heard, I think that East Bay Sanitary has been an impediment to the city of East Palo Alto progressing. And I'm mostly interested in governance. And from that point of view, I think the city of East Palo Alto would be best served if it took over the sanitary district. I understand that that's a procedure that would have to be initiated by LAFCo, but I would be in favor of doing that. I think the citizens would be best served in that way. So that's where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Commissioner Draper.
Yes, one of the speakers talked about deferred maintenance, and I didn't see that in the report, but that harkens back to my first comment about thinking the report understates the existing vulnerabilities of the existing system for the existing residents. And I am concerned that because they haven't taken, meaning West Bay Sanitary, East Bay Sanitary hasn't taken action on their CIP. They haven't done the commonplace, not best practices effort. I agree with Supervisor Horsley. I don't see that this is a well-run district. I have to say that maybe this is huge, but I'm thinking of that apartment condo complex in South Florida, that the managing partners were so concerned with the rates that they didn't want to do anything. And they kept saying, but it's not a problem. It's not a problem. And then of course, then it all collapsed catastrophically. And that's sort of what I'm seeing here, is that these systems are old. There could be deferred maintenance. We didn't have information on that. There's issues that are coming up. Industry standards have just changed since 1939 when the original district, or when these things were put in. And they don't have information or analysis to know. Now they say they will do it. That's good. But they also, one of my questions, do they have the financial high level of capacity to do these financing plans? That's critical. They could be whiz bang engineers, but those are just two different skills. And like I said, when I've worked on these kinds of issues, we had those kinds of skills, legal and financial, because we needed them. And one of the things that is generally accepted is that existing problems are paid by existing ratepayers. New problems, new development, new problems, they pay that. And it appears that the knowledge of what are the existing problems and how do we fix them for the existing systems just hasn't been done. And so they can't say that their rates are up to what they need for solving the existing problem. It appears from what I'm hearing is that they want new development to pay for not only new development impacts, but do all the deferred maintenance. I mean, that's just what I'm hearing today. And so I'll go back to my original comment, is that the report describes the problems to the existing system. And it could be that the district just doesn't have the documents so that the report can talk about them. And if that's the case, then those statements should be in the report. Thanks. That ends my statement.
Okay, Commissioner Cosgrove.
Yeah, just a clarification on where my comment comes from. I'm seeing no sanitary sewer overflows from this district. And I heard, correct me if I'm wrong, $500 to $1 million is being spent currently in the CIP, or has been over the last few years. Did I read that incorrectly?
Yes, the amount varies. The average was about 500,000 to address, to repair and replace, not necessarily to address capacity issues, though.
Sure. So, but that's investment in the system. And do you know what their depreciation is? I mean, that's one rule of thumb I look at is, are they meeting what they're depreciating?
Right. We did look at that and also looked at the rate analysis study done by the district's consultants in 2018. And in both cases, it appears that the district isn't spending an amount equal to depreciation or to what was recommended by the rate study.
Okay, well, that is definitely a room for improvement there. Thank you.
Rob?
Can I, before you do, Rob, could you just say, in terms of overflows, that's really, as I understand it, that's a self-reporting system. That's not.
Correct.
So it's basically that's what they say, they haven't had any overflows, but that isn't necessarily, you have to depend on their word. It's on an honor system. So I'm not at all sure that that's accurate. And the $500,000 they're spending, obviously when they have breaks, they got to maintain the system, but they're just not doing their capital improvement plan. Thanks.
Okay, Rob.
Oh, if there's any other commission questions, I'd be happy to wait. I see Commissioner Lohman.
Commissioner Lohman.
What we seem to have here is a potentially unsolvable problem without further negotiation. I didn't see anywhere in the report costs of existing maintenance required versus cost of new development required.
Right.
That would solve the problem for me. I'm not going to vote for this because that's not there. I would like to see further discussions between these two groups with the requirement that they pick a number. X goes to the sanitary district and X goes to the developers in the city. Until I see that, it just seems to be an unsolvable question. So when can we get that?
Okay, in the presentation this afternoon, I did provide a slide, and if you like, we can go back to it, that includes a table that identifies costs required to address deficiencies of the existing system, and also the additional cost to address capacity issues for new development. And also there are some other upgrades that are required. So that is in the report. I was looking quickly. I couldn't pick out the specific page number where you'll find that table, but it's in the report. And also there is the ongoing repair and patching as needed. And that's where that same table also shows that 500,000 to $1 million that the district has spent, and the amount varies. So those costs are in there, and the MSR does make a substantial effort to document where the numbers came from. They basically all came from various district documents and presentations, primarily the district's 2021 addendum that estimated the pipeline expansions that are required and their costs. So that is currently in the MSR. If there's additional information that we can add, we'd be happy to do it, but it is in there.
Well, I'd like to agree with Josh that the system was designed for something. This new development seems to exceed that. So the developer should pay for it. We have out here on the coast a new project going in, and the new project asked the Granada Sanitary District to waive all their fees, and they asked my district to waive all the fees for the water. We said no, and Granada said no. That's not what we do. So there seems to need some kind of a compromise here of what to do. And again, until I see that, I'm voting no.
Okay, I would just like to refer you to page 133 that includes that additional detail about the costs of the existing system deficiencies and the new development impacts. Now, nobody's agreed to that yet, but the important point is that the district needs to work on a plan that will help achieve that compromise that you're talking about, that is based on the numbers and based on using and tapping into various funding sources. So I agree with what you say, and MSR does include those costs and has at least provided a framework or illustration, but ultimately it's up to the district to put this plan together, and that's what the MSR recommends they do.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Slocum.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. I'm just wondering if it would be appropriate for me now to second Mr. Horsley's motion that he made earlier.
Oh yeah, we had you on the record as seconding it. Everybody just wanted to make comments before a vote. I haven't made any comments. I just wanted to make a comment that sure, everybody would like to keep the rates as low as they can, but in a fiduciary capacity, such as most of us are in, you do need to look at the long-term aspects of maintaining a system that would be safe and workable for your citizens. You also have to deal with the realities that and capacity increases when they need to happen because state law mandates that. And I think I do think that the Palo Alto district does not seem to be looking into the future as any sort of fiduciary capacity. So Rob, you had your hand up?
I did, and thank you, Chair. I just had a couple of comments and then a point of clarification on the recommendation that staff has today for this particular report. I would like to thank Richard and Jennifer for all their work on this draft circulation MSR. I'd also like to thank the district staff and city staff for both the city of East Palo Alto Sanitary District, and for West Bay Sanitary District for working with us through this process. Because again, the MSR is really built on information that comes from these public agencies. That's why there are recommendations to some of these questions that we don't necessarily have the answer for, because those are solutions that need to be done or reports that need to be put together by the agencies themselves. But we can certainly help and recommend actions for those agencies to take to help them come to a conclusion. I think that LAFCo acts in a neutral party in this case, where we can see what those issues are, look at some of the best practices, compare the districts to each other, the agencies to each other, and hopefully be able to use this document to implement some of those recommendations. The point of clarification I had on the recommendation, I can pull my slide up as we have it the actual recommended language for this particular item, because again, this is to some extent the first reading of it. So today, the recommendation is to direct the executive officer to schedule the final municipal service review for the city of East Palo Alto Sanitary District, and West Bay Sanitary District for a public hearing on June 15th. So this would come back to the commission. It would have a response to comments both from the commission here today and the public, and any other written comments or comments that we receive up to the May 5th deadline. So tonight or today, there will be no action to adopt. It's purely just to set the second hearing for that, and then circulate as needed. So that is the recommendation from staff today.
Okay, Commissioner Lohman, I see your hand up. I just want to clarify the maker of the motion. Are you willing to withdraw that motion and do this recommendation as an action item?
You're talking about to me?
Yeah, you're the maker of the motion.
Yes, I would make the motion to direct the executive officer to schedule the final municipal service review for the city of East Palo Alto Sanitary District and West Bay Sanitary District for a public hearing at the June 15th, 2022 commission meeting, and circulate it with any necessary amendments.
Okay, and the second of the motion was Commissioner Slocum. Are you agreeable to what Don just said?
Totally agreeable. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and Commissioner Lohman, you have comments?
Yes, we had a specific, I'm assuming from listening to everybody that when they replace a pipe, they have to expand the pipe to look in to include future development. We had a water district here which tried to do that, and it was appealed and they lost due to, pardon that, what I'm saying is if you try to put in expansion of a system, you know, not just replacement. Replacement would be fine, but we're not talking replacement here. We're talking about replacement with growth. If you're saying they haven't done that, that would be rejected by the Coastal Commission per CCWD's attempt. If it's just maintaining the current pipes, that would not be a problem. But maintaining the current pipes would not solve the current problem. So somewhere here, we need to balance replacing for new development with replacing for the current residents. And I don't see that anywhere in the reports. I'm done.
Okay, Commissioner Horsley.
I'm just calling for the question.
Okay, I was just thinking that myself. Okay, so we have a commissioner has called for the question. Could we please have a roll call vote on the motion, which is on your screen?
Commissioner Cosgrove,
Yes.
Commissioner Horsley,
Yes.
Commissioner Lohman,
Nope.
Commissioner Rohrbach,
Yes.
Commissioner Slocum,
Yes.
Vice Chair Draper,
Yes.
Chairman O'Neill.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Your motion passes 6-1.
Okay, I'd like to next adjourn the meeting to the next LAFCo meeting, which I believe is May 18th.
We do have a quick item for
Oh,
legislation.
sorry. I was thinking. Okay, go ahead.
I will be very brief for legislation. Currently, NISCAL LAFCo is tracking 28 bills. A number of these bills you've already seen before and I presented on. and two of the bills, SB 938 and AB 2957. We at the last commission meeting, there were letters of support that were actually approved by the commission. Those were sent. The one new bill that I'd just like to highlight briefly is SB 1449, which turned from a spot bill into a little bit more bill that's fleshed out as a potential grant program for city unincorporated annexations. The author is still working with LAFCo about some of the details regarding this, but generally the bill would be regarding incentivizing these annexations of inhabited territory, where the grant funds could be used for infrastructure improvements to bring them up to potentially city standards. This has been tried to be reintroduced numerous times, and unfortunately none of those efforts have been passed successfully. So we will keep watch of it and see what additional information comes out of it. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. So now I would like to adjourn the LAFCo meeting for today at 4:43 and call everybody back in May 18th. All right, thank you. Good night, everybody, and thank you for everybody that participated. Good night. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.